we're going to be recording the session because there was quite a lot of folk that couldn't make it. So if you have a comment to make or a question to ask, but would prefer not to be on camera or would prefer to make it anonymously, please just post a message privately to either myself, Janice, or Kim on the chat, and we can ask it for you. And I think the final thing to say is that, like all our sessions, we want this one to be an open and informal space. We're aiming to get a good discussion going after our speakers, so please do feel free to contribute. Okay, so that's the Zoom stuff out of the way. As a SEN, as a social enterprise network, we're always trying to run sessions, and I think this is particularly important for those sessions that have a policy angle, in areas that really resonate and align with what our members and what they do, and what their values and approach are, where they play a significant role and deliver significant impact. And we know that Fair Work is a foundation of government policy and will underpin our recovery and renewal. We also know it's central to a fairer, equal, and more prosperous, and I mean that in the widest sense of the word, country. And we believe social enterprises already align with a lot about Fair Work, about embracing diversity and inclusion, about valuing people, giving people a voice, opportunity, helping people reach their potential and treating them with respect. And for social enterprises, that's often for our most socially and economically excluded people. So to me, Fair Work isn't about a specific skill or job or salary level. It's about what makes work worthwhile to an individual. It's about security. It's about having a sense of purpose. It's about having an opportunity to develop. It's about having your contribution recognised, and I think most importantly, particularly for those that are maybe most disenfranchised, it's about feeling valued and about feeling that you're making a difference. So the current Social Enterprise Action Plan acknowledges, I guess, the kind of synergy between Fair Work and social enterprise. It says that evidence suggests that social enterprises are leading the way on fair and inclusive work practices, but the action plan also challenges us to go further. At the recent National Economic Forum, it was heartening to hear John Swinney reaffirm the importance of the social economy and social enterprises in particular as a partner in supporting our people and our communities and having a positive impact on fair employment and well-being of our people. So when we were thinking about this session, I hope we weren't being too ambitious to look at 3 outcomes. So the first one was to further increase awareness and understanding of fair work among social enterprises. The second one was to take a practical look at how social enterprises can implement fair work practices. And the third one, and I guess from our point of view, equally important, was to shine a light on social enterprises that already embrace fair work principles and how they are, as the action plan says, leading the way. And I guess that's in addition to the ever-present aims of a SENS session, which is to offer networking opportunities and connections between people. So we've got 3 brilliant speakers joining us today to help achieve those outcomes. We've got Rosie Whelan, who heads up Government's Fair Work team, Lisa Gallagher from Flexibility Works, and Lawrence Johnston, who comes from SCAR for Social Enterprise in Aberdeen. I'm delighted to have Rosie here to talk to us about government's ambition to really kind of, I guess, set the scene for fair work, government's ambitions, progress to date, their flagship policy Fair Work First, and also to talk to us about future plans. So I am going to stop talking now and hand over to Rosie. And I have to say, it's lovely to have another Rosemary with us today. My first name is Rosemary, which most people don't know, and there aren't too many of us here. So yes, over to you, Rosie. I think you'll need to unmute.
First rule, always unmute. So just bear with me. I'm going to share a presentation here so you can follow on the screen. So we will all disappear from the screen as this pops up, hopefully. iCloud. Here we go. So thank you, Jane, for giving me this slot this morning. I'm equally happy to be here. It's always a great opportunity to get in front of a group of really important stakeholders who can help us to drive fair work right across the labour market. And the social enterprise sector is a really important sector for our economy. So, as Jane says, I head up the Fair Work Policy and Delivery team. So really, I am responsible for delivering our Fair Work Action Plan and making sure all of the bits of government and stakeholder engagement and involvement in that is all coordinated in order to achieve our ambitions. So let's kick off. So the Scottish Government has a commitment which we share with the Fair Work Convention to making Scotland a leading fair work nation by 2025. Back in 2015, actually, the Scottish Government established the Fair Work Convention, which is an independent advisory body comprising academia, business and trade union representatives, and their role is to advise and support and to challenge Scottish Government on our Fair Work policy. And in 2016, the convention produced the Fair Work Framework, which underpins our Scottish approach. And any of the documents I mentioned today, I'll send links to Jane, and Jane can pass them on to you, and you can use as you find helpful. But in terms of delivering our 2025 vision, we've got some kind of strategic documents that guide us in that approach. So our Fair Work Action Plan, which is for all employers. So fair work is an agenda for all workers. And when we say all workers, we mean employees, people who have employed status, we mean agency workers, contractors, we mean people on permanent and temporary contracts. So it's the full gambit. We also have a gender pay gap action plan, which, as the name suggests, focuses on issues particularly impacting on women and issues that give rise to a gender pay gap. We also have an action plan for disabled people in employment. Again, as the name suggests, really trying to focus on action that breaks down the barriers that prevent disabled people from accessing and sustaining and progressing in the workplace. We did have a race equality action plan, but that has been concluded. It's kind of expired, and there is a plan now to develop a new ethnicity pay gap action plan. And this work is all taken forward largely through our Fair Work unit, but also reaching into the employability side. We're really quite lucky in Fair Work that the government's National Performance Framework has a specific indicator to promote the thriving and innovative businesses with quality jobs and fair work for everyone. And the daisy that you can see on the wheel is the whole set of government indicators, and I'm sorry, I'm saying indicators, outcomes, and the brown daisy at the bottom, kind of down at past on the clock, is our fair work indicator. And I can't underestimate how powerful it is to have an outcome in the National Performance Framework, because the National Performance Framework is a strategic document that sets out the government's overall goals and ambitions and the key activity that will be progressed to achieve those aims. On this page, this is simply a wee collection of quotes from key think tanks, strategic bodies, from the First Minister herself. And for some reason, the bottom of my slide is falling off, but you will get this presentation from Jane later. So this highlights why fair work is good. And we always say it's good for workers, it's good for employers, and it's good for the economy. And Jane has very clearly articulated in her introduction some of that. I think up until fairly recently, our focus has been on kind of promoting fair work, the good for workers message. And that's absolutely right. But fair work is about much more than that. It is good for employers. It's good for business. It makes absolute business sense, and therefore it is good for the economy. So some things you'll see in red. So it promotes job quality, inclusiveness. It supports economic growth and social stability. It can help drive up productivity. It can lift people out of poverty, reduces workplace inequalities and inequality right across society. So if we're in any doubt about why fair work is important, well, here are some examples of why that's so. So I mentioned the Fair Work Convention's framework, and it is built around 5 dimensions of fair work. And these dimensions are what underpin our whole approach. And the dimensions are the sort of the characteristics of fair work that are seen as absolutely essential elements. So I'll just run through these fairly briefly. Effective voice is all about ensuring that workers have a voice in the workplace, and that their voice is recognised, it's listened to, and that is acted on. Now, when I should have said at the start, fair work talks to all sections of the economy. So when I talk about employers, I talk about business, I talk about organisations, that I use these interchangeably. You know, if I'm talking about employers, it's the business that I'm talking about, the organisation that we're talking about. So effective voice is a crucial dimension. And we are very clear that if an organisation does not provide effective voice channels, they will really struggle to deliver the other fair work dimensions. There's a very strong view, and this is endorsed by the Fair Work Convention, that everything we do in our business needs to be informed by workers. They need to have a say in it. We need to draw in their creativity, their inspiring ideas, and their skills. So effective voice is really crucial. Effective voice is often delivered through trade union recognition, but that's not the only mechanism. And I'm pretty confident in saying that trade union recognition will probably not be prominent at all across the social enterprise sector, but we do know that organisations have other mechanisms in place that give workers an effective voice, such as worker committees, various different types of employee forums. Opportunity is about workplace equality, essentially, and says that every worker should have equal access to work and be free of barriers to being able to sustain their work and to be able to progress. Security focuses on security of pay and security of contract. So a fair rate of pay and contracts that offer stability, predictability, and together with security of pay, enable workers to earn a decent pay. Our main mechanism for driving that forward is our work to promote payment of at least the real living wage, which is above the national minimum wage, and to promote secure and stable contracts. And that means opposing the inappropriate use of contracts that offers 0 hours contracts and other precarious terms. We've got a new development in that area as part of the government's 100 days commitment. So in the first 100 days of this new government's term, we will be introducing a living hours scheme. And living hours recognises that fair pay alone, or paying the real living wage alone, will not give workers a fair pay. We need stability of hours and secure contracts at the same time. So we will be introducing this new programme from late summer. Fulfilment is about making sure that workers have a level of autonomy that makes them feel valued, as Jane says, that allows them to contribute, to use their talents and their skills in a way that supports their own development, but also supports the business. And for that, we need well-designed roles. And we also need effective business models. And business models is a really important part of Fair Work. And I was in a meeting just yesterday, it was, between the new Cabinet Secretary for Fair Work and the Minister for Fair Work and the Fair Work Convention. And the Cabinet Secretary recognised that we have quite, a chunk of employers who are already delivering fair work, but there's a mass of employers who are not, or are not doing it sufficiently. And how do we bring that latter chunk with us across the bridge to be stronger on fair work? And what were the barriers to that? And the Fair Work Convention highlighted the importance of business models in that. And they used a kind of analogy that so many businesses in Scotland are locked into business models that were effective 30 or 40 years ago and were developed at a time when they weren't asked to consider fair work. And despite they now recognise the importance of fair work, they're not sure or they don't know how to make the change that's needed. So we think there's work needs done around that area. But the reason I'm saying that is we're aware that in the social enterprise sector, there are innovative business models. And we're keen to learn from what goes on in your sector. So I'll link up with Jane on some of that, identifying good practice going forward. The final dimension is respect, and it's the dimension I think that wraps around all of the other dimensions. And it's built on the principles of human dignity and respect. And it's, essentially about making sure that people are safe, their well-being is protected, and they have good work-life balance in the workplace. Our Fair Work Action Plan is built around 3 themes, and these are supporting employers to adopt fair work, mainstreaming fair work across the Scottish Government, and creating more diverse and inclusive workplaces. And the main actions that we are taking to deliver on those are set out here in front of you. And I think it's important just to remember that employment law, so fair work sits within employment law, but seeks to go beyond current employment law. It's about enhancing the rights of workers, not just meeting the statutory requirements. And employment law is currently reserved to the UK government, and therefore the Scottish Government has very limited legal power to make the changes that would drive the improvements that we want to see in a legal and sustainable way. So we have to rely on our fair work policy to do what we can, whilst at the same time, Scottish Government continues to press the UK Government for the devolution of full employment powers. And quite interestingly, the Scottish Government is committed to host a summit in the autumn to consider the devolution of employment powers. So what are we doing with the powers that we do have? So Fair Work First is one of our key interventions for driving fair work. And that is about using the power of the public purse, I guess, public sector spend to drive good practice. And I'll come back to that in more detail in a few minutes. We also have a Workplace Equality Fund and a Women Returners Programme, which put funding out into organisations to develop new and innovative approaches to improve workplace equality and to support women back into the workplace. And there is a prospect of 2 new funds coming on stream before too long. So watch out for those. And those funds and programmes support our broad diversity and inclusion agenda. So, priorities around supporting women, supporting over 50s, supporting people from minority ethnic backgrounds, supporting disabled workers and supporting young people. So these are all groups who even pre-pandemic faced challenges in the labour market. And since the pandemic, the problem has got worse, the challenges have got bigger. So much more focus on these, on diversity and inclusion as we move forward. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Scottish Business Pledge, but the Business Pledge is a voluntary initiative, and it encourages employers to sign up to be members of the pledge, and that requires them to make a commitment to meeting certain elements, and 5 of those elements absolutely mirror our Fair Work First principles, but they also include criteria such as prompt payment of debt, tackling environmental issues, so really supporting our transition to a net zero green economy, community benefits and other things. I know at the moment that the Business Pledge is not open to charities, but I have to confess that I don't know if social enterprises can become members. I think they can, but I'm not sure. I need to go away and check that, and I'll confirm that with Jane so she can pass that on. But if it is at all a scheme that you're eligible to become members of, you may wish to consider doing that. We work closely with the STUC, so the Scottish Government promotes, recognises that unions play an important part in our labour market, particularly around the areas of collective bargaining. So some focused work around that in particular sectors initially, so construction, social care, those sorts of areas, and hospitality, where we know that collective bargaining can really drive up improvements in the labour market. And we know from international evidence that where there is strong recognition of trade union and strong trade union presence in workplaces, that the terms and conditions for workers is generally much higher. Social care sector was a sector that's been identified by the Fair Work Convention, where fair work needed to be improved. They undertook an inquiry into the sector some time ago and made a series of recommendations, and those are now being progressed to drive fairer work practice for workers in the care sector. I mentioned already, we promote the Real Living Wage and our New Living Hours programme that will come on stream in due course, and that's really important in terms of tackling in-work poverty. And a massive job for us is embedding fair work across Scottish Government. So ministers are absolutely clear that fair work is a cross-cutting policy. It's the responsibility of every cabinet secretary and every minister, and it really touches pretty much every policy area in government. So it's the responsibility of every policy person across government to help us to drive forward fair work. And that's part of why I'm here talking today, because the social enterprise team recognised that. We worked together to make sure that fair work is reflected in the social enterprise action plan to drive fair work forward across your sector. And essentially what I see is, where a policy depends on a workforce, fair work is relevant. If there is a programme there that can be used to drive fair work, or a fund, then we should be using it. We also take every opportunity to promote fair work through stakeholder networks, such as your own. Yesterday I spoke in a similar way to Screen Scotland, so they represent that industrial sector. That's to do with broadcasting, film, all of that, so BBC and all these different bodies in there, which is they have some particular challenges because it's predominantly staffed by freelancers, and that's actually a chunk of the workforce that Fair Work hasn't yet considered, but for which we know there are some real challenges. I mentioned the importance of effective voice. So that's really important in workplaces, and it's really important, therefore, in terms of the way that we develop our own policies in government. And we want to see routine engagement with trade unions right across policy developments, so that the workers' voice is at the heart and is really properly considered in new policies that we do and the way we review our policies. So I mentioned Fair Work First earlier, and Fair Work First is our flagship policy. As Jane said, that's the way we describe it, and it is about using the power of public spend. So in the absence of having control over employment law, it is one of the levers that we do have. Scottish Government puts out a massive chunk of funding right across the public sector every year, and that money makes its way to the private sector, to local government, to public bodies, to charities, to social enterprises, and all sorts of businesses right across the labour market. And we want to use that funding to drive fair work. We describe Fair Work First as using a type of conditionality to drive our ambitions. So what we're saying essentially is that employers, organisations receiving public sector grants, and I know that social enterprises do, any other funding, or are delivering contracts through public sector procurement, are asked to commit to adopting fair work criteria. And that's important language, that asked to commit to. It's a long-term commitment. We know that fair work involves a journey, and we like to look on it as a journey of continuous improvement in business planning, business practice, business modelling. And Fair Work First applies 5 criteria, and these criteria are in front of you here. And I think you will see quite clearly that they reflect the dimensions of fair work that I've already mentioned. And these criteria seek to address key challenges in the labour market. As I mentioned, we have 2 fair work commitments to deliver within the first 100 days, and that is kind of by the end of August. And that is one of these is to extend this criteria to support flexible and family-friendly working, and to oppose the unfair use of fire and rehire tactics. Now, these have always been on our fair work radar. Up until now, we've largely promoted flexible working through our diverse and inclusive workplaces agenda, recognising that many of the more disadvantaged groups really benefit from flexible working. However, during the pandemic, we've seen real changes in the way people work, and it's shown that flexible working can benefit most people, and that a great many businesses can work perfectly efficiently with flexible working in place. And we've seen a real shift in the way employers have moved towards flexible working. Previously, some employers were quite resistant to it. They were not keen to offer it at all. But now many businesses have depended on the flexibility that workers can offer to keep their businesses running. So we want to really offer or to promote flexible working for all workers. There will obviously be some caveats around there. It's not appropriate, or it's not suitable for every single job or every single business, but we will work with our key stakeholders in the Fair Work Convention to define what all that looks like. We do have Fair Work First guidance, which is out there, and it's really it's useful guidance whether or not you are accessing funding. It sets out a whole range of good practice and explains why each of these criteria is beneficial for an organisation and the benefits for individual workers. And the good practice sets out a whole range of ways you know, examples of what it can look like that have been tailored to support the smallest businesses and the largest businesses. Fair Work during the pandemic. So we worried at the start of the pandemic that Fair Work would fall off our radar. I have to say the exact opposite happened, and it very quickly became evident that upholding our Fair Work standards was even more important than ever. And there's been a really strong message from key thinking bodies, strategic partners, that Fair Work absolutely needs to be at the heart of our economic recovery and renewal. And the new economic strategy for transformation that is currently in the planning will have Fair Work at its heart. Early on in the pandemic, we developed a COVID statement with key partners, and they've all become co-signatories of that, setting out the shared expectation of the high Fair Work standards that we expected businesses, organisations to continue delivering. And the partners are listed here, and I guess maybe the one most, I don't know, I'm maybe not got this wrong, but SCVO are a key partner in there, and maybe their type of organisation resonates more closely with a social enterprise than some of these other bigger strategic business organisations that also supported the statement. Fair Work First was also applied to the various COVID mitigation support grants that were issued through the enterprise agencies over the piece, asking employers to demonstrate their commitment to fair work. We worked really hard to make sure that Fair Work was at the heart of our Safer Workplaces approach and is embedded in all of the Safer Workplaces guidance that was developed to support different sectors across the economy to carry on working in safe ways during the pandemic. We also had a public sector leaders summit in race equality to promote the importance of fair work and that priority for tackling barriers facing minority ethnic groups over Easter. So a lot of work going on, a lot of good progress made, but a massive job still to do. So what are we doing? So we've got a new ministerial team, a new cabinet secretary, a new minister, both with Fair Work firmly within their remits, and both very, very committed to fair work. I mentioned we have our vision for a fair work nation, but we've never properly defined what that will look like. So what do we want Scotland to look like if we describe it as a fair work nation? So we're holding a consultation to get views on that, and we hope to launch that in the autumn, probably mid-September. And I will liaise with Jane to make sure that she gets a link to that and can disseminate it across the network so that you all have the opportunity to feed into that from your social enterprise perspective. What would you want for your sector in 2025? So we look forward to your involvement in that. We will be rolling Fair Work First out right across the public sector. So our priority up until now has been to get Fair Work First cemented into public bodies, and there are over 140 of those. So that's what we've been doing. Our next priority is to get local government, the NHS and the police service to commit to adopting Fair Work First as well. And we got just last week agreement from the 32 chief officers and local authorities to do just that. So that's really encouraging. Excuse me. We will be applying Fair Work through other major investment the Scottish Government is making. So you might be aware of the potential for a green ports development in Scotland, the massive programme of investment in affordable and sustainable housing, green jobs. There's a green jobs fund out for application at the moment, our digital provision. So we've got Fair Work embedded in the full fibre broadband charter, a lot of activity on decarbonisation, and of course the massive opportunities through construction and using our procurements to get fair work and drive up fair work in the construction sector. We're also using place-based approaches, so through community wealth building and the massive funding that's going into city and growth deals to embed fair work into those approaches. As I said, we're implementing fair work through the social care activity, and the Fair Work Convention are continuing to do inquiries into sectors where they feel that fair work could be strengthened. So they're currently doing an inquiry in construction. The next one is hospitality. And we know, as you will be familiar, hospitality has suffered tremendously through the pandemic. So that, and there is a huge job to help that sector to recover. So this will be really important work in helping to make sure that in that recovery, fair work is absolutely incorporated. I mentioned our new economic strategy for transformation, and all of this work, and in particular our consultation, will enable us to refresh our Fair Work Action Plan to make sure it's current, to make sure that we're taking the action that will make the difference and help us to achieve that ambition to be a fair work nation. So I'm going to stop there. We could talk about fair work all day, and I've probably taken up more time talking than I had hoped and you had hoped, but I hope we've still got a bit of time for some discussion. Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Rosie.
I'm going to take the slides off share and then we can see our faces again. Thank you. And I'll go into mute until you need me to talk, because we know there's a bit of echo going on here.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for that, Rosie. I mean, obviously, we're really happy to pick up with you on the areas that you highlighted. We're always happy to connect and highlight good practice in the social enterprise sector, and also the innovativeness that is that a word? The innovation that you highlighted that kind of is prevalent across our sector. I guess for me, you've absolutely and clearly highlighted the kind of far-reaching impact of fair work, both across government policy areas and ambition, but also across all sectors of the economy for both employers and employees. And I guess that the part that you talked about, lifting people out of poverty, I think that's potentially key going forward, because we know in-work poverty's risen even while we were experiencing record high levels of employment, and in-work poverty was rising before the pandemic. So finding a way within the current powers of how we maximise the reach and impact of fair work around tackling insecure work, around improving job quality, opportunities for progression, and I guess about increasing the availability of flexible and part-time work, I think probably going to be key to that. And I think that leads me nicely onto our next speaker. So Lisa Gallagher is director and co-founder of Flexibility Works. And when we were planning this session and we were looking to provide that sort of practical element, Flexible Works were my go-to, basically. And I've since learned that just by total coincidence and an example of great minds, hopefully, rather than the alternative, we have some joined up thinking at work here, because government are working with Flexibility Works also to support them to help define good practice around flexible working. So Lisa, I'm handing over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jane. I think this is just a brilliant conversation. I think it's so timely, it's so important, and the breadth of initiatives that Rosie was talking about there in relation to fair work, the various dimensions of fair work, which I think really social enterprise has been kind of doing and implementing for years anyway as a sector. And I was listening to a podcast last night. Mary Portas was speaking. You know, she's the lady that goes into the high street and tries to kind of rejuvenate kind of shops and so on and rebuild the high street. And she was talking about the importance of, you know, building back from COVID in a way that business is not just looking at growth, but we're looking at things like people's well-being, their security, you know, community, participation. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But again, social enterprise has been doing this for years. And I think, you know, you're all so well placed now in this, you know, time that we have. And there's a really unique opportunity, I think, to be redefining business and organizations, communities in a way that, you know, we've been doing for a long time, but I think is really starting to capture everyone's imagination. So this is just, it's a great conversation, and I loved listening to the breadth of initiatives that are going on within government to kind of kick this whole thing off. So this morning I'm going to talk about flexible working, which I believe is one key part of creating a fair work Scotland, and I'm going to share a little bit of our insight and research and insight from the conversations that we have with employers all the time. And I'm going to hear from you a little bit. I've got a couple of poll questions, so you know, don't be sitting back feeling too relaxed during the next few minutes. I'm going to be asking for your input as well, so I hope that's okay. So flexible and hybrid working definitely now looks like the future for many of us. As Rosie was saying, the pandemic has proven people don't need to be in an office to be productive. And a hybrid model, which is some days in the office and some home working, is absolutely expected now by many employers and employees alike as we emerge from this pandemic. And yet I absolutely believe that flexible working will have to be built into the future of work if we're to achieve a Fair Work Scotland. So this might be overstating a point, but I just want to kind of share what we believe to be flexible working, that kind of definition. So for us, it's about where, when, and how much someone works. And although it is perhaps most common in an office-based role, I would argue that an element of flex can be implemented in all roles, albeit it will look and feel, of course, different. So it might be shift swapping or adjustments to start and finish times, input to rotas or compressed hours, for example. Even some frontline workers, such as care workers, have started incorporating some home working during the last year for things like admin and calls, and call centre workers who were previously completely in an office and discounted from any kind of home working have been working remotely in their millions this year. On the very significant plus side about the benefits of flex, you know, flexible working is what many workers say they want. Pre-COVID, 75%, just shy of 75% of us in Scotland either had or wanted flexible working. And our recent research shows that about 80% of all Scottish workers intend to request a bit more flexible working post-pandemic. And I guess it's easy to see why. You know, saving money on travel time and costs, seeing more of our families, nipping out to the dentist or for a walk at lunchtime or a cycle, or to pick up the kids from school, walking the dog at lunchtime, being home for deliveries, putting on a pot of soup, you know, at lunchtime so you don't have to faff around doing it later. All these things make the balance between work and home life that much more harmonious. From an employer perspective, benefits too. 78% of Scottish business leaders that we spoke to in our survey told us that COVID has permanently changed how, when and where we work. And 61% expect more of their employees to be requesting home working in the future. And I guess the benefits for business include things like cost savings on office space and travel, happier, more productive and engaged people, and reductions in their carbon footprint too. Massive thing with COP26 coming to Glasgow. We all need to be looking at the environment, and more flexible working, I think, is going to have an impact on that. And other benefits for business are recruiting from a wider geographical pool and also a more diverse talent pool. You know, people, particularly women, people with a disability, carers, you know, flexible working is really important to these groups in particular. So I'm going to pause now, if I can, to ask for your views at this stage. If Jane, if you're okay with the first poll question, is that okay? We've got the first question here, if you don't mind having a look at that. So pre-pandemic, if you can cast your mind back, how much flexible working did you have? I had all the flexible working I wanted and needed. I had quite a bit. I'd have been interested in having more. I had a little bit. I had limited or no flex, or I didn't work flex and I was comfortable with that. Would you be able to choose your answer, please? This is casting your mind back before COVID, all those many months ago. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to do that? Jane, are you able to share the results if they're ready? Okay, hopefully you can all see that as well. So this is really interesting. So 32%, about a third, that's really nice. You had all the flex that you wanted and needed. And I think that's quite representative of the sector. I think it's higher than in private business. I had quite a bit of flexible working, but was interested in having more. Same percentage, 32. I had a little bit, but was keen to have much more, 16%. And I had limited or no flexible working, and I found this frustrating. Okay, I think that's really interesting. I think what that shows is great in terms of your sector. A third of people had everything that you wanted. That's very positive, but you can still see there that the vast majority of people are still looking for quite a bit more flexible working than they had in the past. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I hope that sets the tone for the room. I think that's really useful to see. Okay, good stuff. And the second question, if you don't mind, this is now looking to the future. So this is compared to how you worked pre-pandemic. How ideally do you want to work in the future? So you would like some more flexibility over your working hours only, so maybe adjustments to start and finish times, or compressed hours, or part-time. More flexibility over your location. The third option is about location and hours. And then the final option is, thanks, I'm okay. I had all the flex I wanted and needed. Okay, thank you. Asking you to get your brain cells working today. Okay. Thank you. Jane, would you like to share the results if everyone's had a chance to? Okay, good. So I would like more flexibility over my working hours only, so very low, 2%. Again, I think that kind of aligns with our research. I would like more flexibility over my location, 25%, so a bit more home working, remote working, a bit more control over that. 45% would like more flexibility over working hours and location, so almost half of you are looking for that bit more. I need all the flexibility I wanted and needed, 27%. Okay, I think that's really interesting to see that. And 45% of you are looking for a bit more in home working, remote working, and over your hours. So yeah, there's still some work to be done in the sector. I think you're in a good position. A lot of you are already working flexibly, but even within this sector, there's still that kind of real drive and desire for a bit more. Okay, thank you so much. Right, you can relax. That's the last question I'm asking you for just now. Good stuff. Okay. I want to just share a little bit more about who kind of wants flex now and the reasons why, and then kind of share some thoughts about what we might encourage you to be thinking about kind of going forward as we move into an even more flexible world. We've just seen there, people are still looking, even within this sector, for more flex. So for me, I first got interested and involved in flexible working when I had my first son, wee Alfie, who's about to turn 6. And I was running a third sector organisation at that time and was keen to work job share after I came back from maternity leave, but sadly this was not meant to be. And I was really upset and sad about that and frustrated, but I also noticed that there was a general lack of flexible working opportunities, particularly at senior level, but really across the board. I realised, of course, it wasn't just me, and that many people's lives were impacted by a lack of flexible working. And I really began to think about the negative impact that this was having, not just on people, but as Rosie said, on businesses and our economy. Organisations were losing talent by not offering flexible working and that supportive working environment. And more worryingly, when people don't have a good work-life balance, they're more likely to become disengaged, which is not good for any team or for any organisation. And worse still, people are being locked out of the labour market when they don't have access to flexible working. If you're unable to fulfill your caring responsibilities, for example, if you're not able to work part-time, then you don't have the same opportunity to have a fulfilling job or to provide the financial security for your family. And I guess the more that I research this subject, I realise the need for flexibility will ebb and flow throughout everyone's working life. You know, there's key points really when flex is completely invaluable, when someone has young children or teenagers or that run up to retirement, when caring for a parent or a partner during periods of ill health, you know, or when someone simply wants to expand their life by doing community work or pursuing an interest. You know, the list really does go on. And sitting above all of this is something universal to all of us, which is our work-life harmony and our right to happiness, really, and our well-being and our financial security. And I can think really at no point in our lives where flexibility wouldn't be beneficial. And now I've got 3 boys, and while there's still work to be done, thankfully more and more organisations in Scotland are embedding a flexible working approach, and COVID certainly, again, as Rosie had said, it's increased that appetite and also understanding. We've lived it, we've worked it in the last year for flexible working, and it's put it really in the forefront of many more employers' minds. So last year we did, or at the end of last year, we did some research with employers and employees about flexible working. So what did that research tell us? So yes, COVID was really tough. And as I've said, about 80% of Scottish workers say they're considering requesting a bit more flex in the future. And this includes people who didn't work flexibly before COVID, but even many of those who did have flex pre-COVID are looking for even more flex. And I think even our little poll there that we did with the group today shows that that's certainly the case. Just over 30% of people that we surveyed want greater flex over their working hours, but most people are just looking for small adjustments. So having the ability to have a bit more control over maybe when you start in the morning, maybe a longer break in the during lunchtime, or to finish at different times of the day. Unsurprisingly, working from home is what most people say they want more of. And as we know, not all roles can be done at home, and also not everyone has the space to work from home or an environment that's conducive to good working. And people have really missed the social interaction. I know that I have. That really came through loud and clear in our research. And now almost half of workers say they want to work from home more often. Comparing to what it was like pre-COVID, only 12% of people worked regularly from home. It's so weird to think that now. 12% worked from home regularly pre-pandemic, and it rose to 60% during that first lockdown. So huge change overnight. But what I'm seeing more of is that more people and more businesses are planning for a bit more home working than ever before, but they're planning for a mix. So a hybrid kind of setup of office and home working. The trend we're seeing is about 2 or 3 days at home and the rest in the office. But there's some people who are looking to go completely remote and others who say at the moment that they never want to work from home again. Interestingly, and probably helpful for you, is there seems to be a tendency amongst many people that we've been talking to that they don't want to have a feeling of being prescribed to about how much time and specific days that they spend in the office. But also remember, just now it's quite an anxious time for people. You know, we don't know exactly what that future of work will look like. And I do think we should be aware that people's views may likely to change again in another 6 months or so. We've seen that there are some businesses completely closing their offices altogether, but most, I would say most, are just redefining their office needs and office space. Some are looking to establish local hubs and adapting the working environment to make the office more of a collaborative touchdown space. So it does look like hybrid way of working is the future for many of us. And COVID has led many of us to reevaluate, I guess, our life and our work balance or harmony, and creating a much more important kind of focus on fair work and work-life balance for many of us. I'm sure many of you as managers and kind of organisational leaders are thinking about options for your teams and yourself going forward. And so I think it is the opportunity to seize that moment and use this opportunity. So I've just to kind of wrap up, I've compiled a list of 5 things that you could be thinking about right now in relation to flexible working. I always like to leave people with something quite practical. So the first thing is find out what people want and canvass their ideas. This is not rocket science, but you'd be surprised at how many organisations are still to do this. So we've been doing a lot of employee insight and engagement work this year. So I would really encourage you, if you've not done so already, to listen and talk to people about their working preferences. People feel so empowered when their employer seeks their views on working culture and flexibility. I've had 2 great conversations with 2 different employers, sets of employers this week and employees, and they just said it's been great to sit down for an hour and talk about our views and know that other people think similarly to us. So I would say let people's views and experiences of the past inform your organisation's future. So that's the first thing, people and their ideas. The second thing is establish a clear vision for flexible working within your leadership team and organisation. Again, we've been working with lots of leadership teams this year, helping them to create a clear idea, vision for how they want their working culture to be, their flexibility. Is it remote first, hybrid, office first? And once that's decided, what are the operational and practical parameters under which people can function? And I would definitely say line managers are key to all of this. Train, and support your managers how to manage flexible teams well. The third thing I would say is think as a team. You know, if the mood within your organisation is for more flex in the organisation, and if more people are going to be working remotely, then you will probably be thinking of practicalities like, how do we stay connected as a team? How do we collaborate? How do we share information? And I'm sure, like all of us, you'll have adapted and learned so much during the pandemic. So I would suggest carving out some time as a team and have an open conversation and almost start to develop some team protocols around all of this, agreeing things like, you know, when are we going to meet together face to face? How will we know when and where people are available, and so on. We've got a nice guide on how to establish a team protocol that I can share with you all, which takes you through step by step and is quite helpful. I'm happy to share that afterwards. The fourth point, which is strongly linked to fair work, is think about equality and inclusion. And really important when we're talking about hybrid working, I would say. We all play a role in creating equal and inclusive workplaces. And I know that the social enterprise sector is a kind of really just vital part of what you do. But there is a risk that when we move to a hybrid system of working, that there will become a 2-tier system. And we've seen in the past with people who are less visible in an office, so part-time workers, for example, or people working from home, quite often miss out on interesting projects or promotion. And not surprisingly, those people tend to be women or carers or people with a disability. So when we have a choice again about where we work, I say we all need to be really mindful about ensuring those who might be less visible in an office environment are still equally valued and included in the team and are given equal opportunities for projects, training, and even socialising. So that's the equality and inclusion piece. And finally, point number 5 is to think about your own well-being and the well-being of others. So if we're really to sustain a more flexible and hybrid way of working on a long-term basis, we definitely need to focus on how we stay well in this new way of working. We don't burn out, we don't overwork and become isolated. And there's a lot of great resources out there in regards to well-being. Even our little Flexibility Works team yesterday, we met up face to face out in the fresh air, and it was just so great to be together and to be working in a different environment. And I felt so refreshed and, you know, ready for another busy day today after that. So really thinking about all of our well-being is so important in all of this. So just to conclude, I would say the time is now to strategically plan out the working culture that you want in the future. And I guess you can all play a really important role in this. And flexible working, I believe, is one key element of creating a truly fair work nation. If you need any help or support to think about your flexible working culture, Flexibility Works, we're here to help you and have a conversation. So thanks so much for having me along today. This is just a great conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. That was really, really interesting. And I think the one take home for me from that is that we have to be flexible about being flexible, because there's so many variations and it means different things to different people, and it will change, people's needs will change over time too. So thank you for that. I am conscious of time, so I am just going to head straight over to Lawrence, who's here, who's Business Development Manager with SCARF, and he's going to tell you about what they do and how they have embedded Fair Work within SCARF. Lawrence, let's hope the internet connection holds out for us.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I'll apologise in advance because the internet seems to be freezing intermittently for a couple of seconds. So I'm just going to share my screen. Jane, if you can maybe confirm that that is now visible.
It is. Grand.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so just very quickly, the background to SCARF. Sorry, I'll just get the. Very quickly, just in terms of SCARF, the background, we are a registered charity founded in 1985 as an urban aid project to tackle fuel poverty in Aberdeen City. We've grown since to have between 55, 60 staff based across 2 offices in Aberdeen and Dundee. And we deliver energy advice services, and we manage energy efficiency improvement contracts for the public sector. Scotland. Charitable aims are eradicating fuel poverty, promoting energy efficiency, and subsequently reducing carbon emissions. And probably one of our most proud achievements is that we have been listed in the Sunday Times top 100 UK not-for-profit companies for 6 of the last 7 years. We try and live our values every day. Treat all with respect, and that these are values that we encourage our people to live in and out of work, of course. And today I just want to give you a little flavour of some of the things that happen in SCARF, which hopefully demonstrate our commitment to the Fair Work framework. So in terms of workforce engagement, our main medium or platform for workforce engagement is what we call our staff association. That's made up of, I think probably at this point, about 8 or 9 people from within the organisation across all the areas of the business. Main remit being to promote health and well-being for all staff. That includes organising social and charity events, looking to improvement within the organisation, both from a business and a personal level, and to maintain good employee relations. We also have commitments to a number of mental health and wellbeing schemes. Healthy Working Lives programme is probably the main one that we subscribe to at the moment. But we also have internal trained mental health first aiders. We also do some initiatives. We've got one running at the moment, which is called Wellbeing Wednesday. So every Wednesday, there's communication goes out first thing in the morning, and it will be around some sort of mental health and well-being initiative or program, or links to events that are happening within the local area at that time. We also hold quarterly all-staff meetings. Held them. These are interactive sessions whereby we do a little bit of background to an update on the business, and then we move on to some bit more fun related interactive virtual activities, which really been well received by our staff, that we've been able to continue delivering these virtually over the last 18 months. And we also we made a kind of significant change to how we developed our strategy in the last 12 months. we opened it up to staff to provide contribution to the development of the strategy, so they could come forward with ideas on how SCARF as an organisation could improve what we do and how we do it. We were able to develop the strategy from the input of all staff. And we've got a number of staff who are actively engaged in participating in the working groups for each of the elements of the strategy as well. So that gives that kind of like buy-in, inclusive and ownership type feel, you know, for the people within the organisation. It can helps their kind of job satisfaction, fulfilment, realisation, etc. We are an equal opportunities employer. All our policies and procedures like this. All our staff are recruited through a robust recruitment process. We offer terms of contracts of employment. Fair to say that often our contracts are fixed term contracts because of the nature of the contracts we deliver for our funders and customers. We have a standard working week, which is 35 hours spread over 7 days. The reason it's 7 days is because we are, through a number of our services, delivering external events, and often these events are over the weekend. So that's why we need that 5 from 7 days cover. And although I say that a lot of our contracts are fixed term, we have numerous examples over the last 3 to 4 years where fixed term contracts have become permanent contracts for staff. So we are always looking for opportunities to promote from within as the first choice where it's reasonable and practical. Although we don't you know, we look at people's skill sets and people's and if it's right fit for both sides. Promotion or transfer to another part. Our pay scheme is set by a formal evaluation process. Negotiations and internal grading structures are all you know, conducted with a board of directors approval. And an example of again, our commitment is that through the pandemic, for any staff that we did have on furlough at the beginning of the pandemic, we topped up their salary by the 20% required to enable them to remain on 100% pay during their period of furlough. What we do with flexible working is we identify, as Lisa has covered quite well, that, you know, to turn up at their desk at 9 AM and have their computer switched on by 1 minute past and have you know, timed or kind of regimented times for breaks. We've identified that doesn't necessarily add value to, you know, our staff, and certainly doesn't you know, create that kind of autonomous, trustworthy, productive environment for people, and people are far more receptive to be given, you know, the opportunity to manage their own time, and you know, we monitor that it's managed well, and that works for us. We offer, because of the, you know, the flexible nature of the delivery of some of our contracts, we offer we have a core working day which is 10 AM to 4 PM. We kind of ideally like everyone to be available during, but out with that, you know, people can come in early, they can leave earlier, they can work additional hours, and they can bank these hours to be used at their discretion, you know, if they require time off, you know, for something out with the work environment. And in terms of, again, just from recruitment and that, we support all our employees with a full induction and onboarding programme. Along with that, there comes a 3-month probationary period with 2 interim reviews that are built in, where the employee and the organisation have an opportunity observations of the situation through the probationary period. We adopt some things. We have a buddy system whereby new members of staff, or indeed older members of staff, but maybe interested in another part of the business, have an opportunity to expose themselves to that through shadowing other staff members in other parts of the business. We qualification for level 3 energy awareness. We also support that for some positions with an SQA in customer service. This is all fully funded by the organisation. We always give consideration to external courses or requests for external courses if it meets the business and the personal objectives of the staff member. And we deliver, we're always obviously continuously looking at our policies and processes, and we deliver internal training on all our policies and processes across the organisation, you know, at various times. In terms of fulfilment, I mean, we do put, or we feel we put a lot of effort into making SCARF a good, and I think, you know, some of the things that some of the accreditations we have, benchmark of how well, you know, we are doing in that. As I previously mentioned, you know, being recognised in the Sunday Times not-for-profit organisations, proud of. I think our best whole of the UK for not-for-profit organisations. We hold silver accreditation for investors in people and investors in young people, and we are a living wage and a disability confident employer. I won't go through all these, but these are just some examples of some of the benefits that our staff get. Maybe some of the main ones are around the employee assistance program that we subscribe to. That's basically, it's a non-intrusive 24/7 access to talk to someone if it's can be work related or out of work related. It also can provide a direct and often quicker access to professional counselling services. We've got various other schemes. We allow people to have their birthday off paid, and they are also allowed one volunteering day a year off paid as well. And we've got numerous other schemes around tech and cycle salary sacrifice schemes. We've got an e-bike hire scheme, and we also haven't done this year obviously, but we normally have an annual off-site activity day where again we don't do something like, I think we've done paintballing in the past. The one prior to the pandemic, we did curling at the Aberdeen ice rink. So again, these are little things, but I think they're recognised by our staff as being, I guess, perks and just recognition of, you know, what they are doing and what they're contributing on a day-to-day basis. And just quickly to what we do, and going back to our values again, and you know, respect is one of our key values, and it drives the content of all our policies and procedures and indeed our working practices. This has been demonstrated in the last, well, probably 4 months ago now. We put a recommendation to our board, which was approved, to put significant amount of investment for ourselves into a 3-year leadership and development programme, which has been delivered by Cognition Coaching. What this does is from board of directors through leadership team, senior management and all staff, every member of staff will have a CME profile created for them. So it's around about, you know, their personal traits, their behaviours, how they like to be treated, how they receive you know, feedback best. And what it does is it allows, we've shared that, or we will be sharing that in the next month across the organisation. And what it allows each of us to see is how our colleagues, you know, what their contribution is, where they see themselves in the business, and probably most importantly is how they like to be communicated to. And you know, some people, you know, if I take an example of people with high red collar energy, are very outgoing, they're very forthright, and you know, they will put their point across, where we got other members of staff who are a bit more green coloured, so they are a bit more reserved. They like time to think. They don't like to be put in the spot. So by having visibility and transparency of how everybody prefers to kind of interact, it's going to enable us to interact and collaborate better with each other, on a day-to-day basis. And I guess maybe the very final things, appreciate where we're kind of a little bit short on time, is just to what we're looking at doing forward, moving forward with flexible working is we've surveyed the staff twice in the last 6 months, and it's pretty much a case of full time moving forward. Some staff want to work a blend of full-time, part-time at home and part-time in the office. So what we're going to do is, in consideration of people who need that office space and potentially need that social interaction, we're going to open the office probably from the beginning of August. I think will be our plan. It'll be opened potentially on a Monday to Friday basis. It'll be rotated with senior managers being on site. So the office space will be open and accessible for staff who want to use it, but there will be no expectation of staff to come into the office. So those who want to work from home full time can. Those who need that office space from time to time, it will be available to them, and we'll do that. We'll review that maybe in 6 months' time and see where we're at. So that's a very quick overview of what we are doing, and hopefully that's given you a little bit of a flavour. I'm more than happy, after this webinar, to if Jane wants to share contact details, to pick any discussions up with anybody, after this, guys. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Lawrence. It was fantastic to see, Fair Work in action, and enhancing your business and your employees, and just recognising your staff as individuals, and I guess hearing about how you're bringing to life some of the tips that sort of Lisa shared with us earlier as well. So all aligning nicely, I think. I'm sorry that I asked you to whiz through, because I did want to give a little bit of time for questions, or if anyone had anything that they would like to share with us just now. And I know David Stewart, you've had your hand up for quite a while, and you've been very patient, so I'll come to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. And sorry, my hand's been up because I don't know how to put it back down, so it's going to be up forever until you end the meeting. Listen, thanks to all the speakers. That was excellent. I think a couple of points. One, Lisa, really interested in the surveys. I think that, if you'd asked me those questions over a year and a half ago, I'd probably have said I had as much flexibility as I wanted to. But now, one thing the pandemic has certainly done is taught us what is actually possible and what we can do. So now it's only now that we realise that there's more flexibility and that you can actually do more. And I think one of the key things for us, certainly in our work, is that, this is a time for employers to look at and to reassess how they do things, and not to just come back to doing what they've always done. And actually, at a time that is business critical, there might be some employers thinking they can't grow, they can't recruit staff, but actually, well, let's consider flexible working, let's consider part-time working as an opportunity to bring staff in to achieve a wee bit of growth, but not live without your means. And I think certainly the work that I'm doing, we're looking at disabled people and the opportunities they get. And Rosemary, I was really keen to hear then more about the Fair Work framework, if you like. But my question then is, okay, so what next? Okay, so we pull all together this stuff. Here's the guidelines, here's the recommendations, here's what we should be doing. We've got all these different initiatives that are working, and this could be huge, but looking particularly at the opportunities afforded to disabled people or people with longer term health conditions. I'm managing the PSP project, which is also funded through the Scottish Government. And one of my key drivers just now is aligning all of these initiatives and bringing all of these propositions together to work together and to ensure that we're achieving more. And I guess my question is more an offer to you to say I'd be really keen to catch up to discuss and hear your views, and actually, how can the PSP help the Fair Work agenda? How could we become part of what you're doing and actually make sure that those opportunities are being put into practice so that disabled people are given the chance to go and work? So fair work and opportunity and effective voice and security and fulfillment and respect, everything you spoke about is key. But actually, we know that the opportunity starts before the job. We know that there are a lot of disabled people not getting the opportunity to be aware of vacancies, not getting the opportunity to apply for job or to complete the application process or the interview process. So actually the opportunity bit for me comes at that earlier stage, and I'd be really keen to see how an existing project like the PSP, who a lot of our partners are in this virtual meeting as well, could support what you're doing and actually make more employers understand and implement fair work practices. So I guess it's one thing to be aware of what they are, but we need to make sure that employers are supported to do it properly and make sure that they're putting it in place. So it's an offer really more than a question.
Thanks, David. Rosie, I'll let you come back on that.
Just jump in. Thank you. Thanks, David. And I did recognise from your banner at the back of you the Susan. I can't remember off the top of my head what it stands for, but I am familiar with you. So the PSP, the Public Social Partnership. Yep. So you will probably engage quite closely with Bridget Sly from our employability team. Yep. So we're in separate directorates, but Bridget and I work very closely together, and it is our job to make sure that there is alignment across what she's trying to do and what we are, and absolutely getting fair work into that PSP network and mechanism will be important. But it might be helpful for Bridget and I to have a chat with you at some point together, just to explore what more we can do. So I'm happy to pick that up with Bridget, but if you want to also mention to her as well that we've had this discussion and we can get something scheduled in.
Great.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, David.
Jane,
go on, Lisa.
Sorry, Jane. I was just going to add, I think from our point of view, employers are just, we're all people at the end of the day. We want to run good organisations, successful organisations, but sometimes we're just looking for that practical help and support. Certainly from our perspective, when we're running our webinars or going in to talk to employers, people just want to know practically what I can do. I want to do the best for my organisation, but what can I do to implement some of these things? So for us, it's actually just getting people together like this. It's about building that community, starting to build the terms. Fair work, flexible working now is in so many more people's minds, but building those terms into just everyday business speak, and then offering up very practical suggestions of how people can, for example, advertise flexible roles from day one, because we know people with disabilities, for example, appreciate having that added element of flexible working. You don't have to necessarily come into an office and go through that physical, experience of getting on a train or whatever it might be to get into a workplace. Having the option to work from home we've spoken to many people with disabilities this last year, and they've said it's been a total game changer for them. So talking to employers about offering up flex from day one, advertising roles as flexible, and you'd be surprised the number of employers who do already offer flex, but they don't advertise roles as flexible. It seems such an easy solution. So I think it's about building our voice, our community, and then just being quite practical about, okay, what can we do? And therefore the benefits to the individuals and then to the organisation. I guess that's the approach that we've been taking.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Lisa. It is about what's practical and what's realistic for each individual organisation. And I had been hoping, I think, to have a bit more of a discussion around what support social enterprises needed to kind of go further, to do more, to kind of, I guess, whether it's to adopt, whether to become a living wage employer or adopt one of the other I guess practices that are aligned with Fair Work. You know, what do social enterprises need? But I am conscious that we are 2 minutes off our finish time, and I did not do a very good job of chairing the meeting, keeping us to time. So I do apologise for that. What I will say is that we'll be sharing the presentations after the session. So we'll get that out to you all. I will check with speakers that they're happy to have their contact details shared, and if so, we can share those with you as well. We also have the Community Learning Exchange, which is relaunched. So if, for instance, you wanted to hear more about SCARF and what they're doing and how they do it and what works and why it works, then you can use the Community Learning Exchange as a mechanism to find out more, and you can do that through ourselves. So do drop us a line. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to share with us or ask just before we finish? I need a virtual hand, I think, at this point. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So I would just like to say a particular thank you to our 3 speakers today. You've been fantastic. I think you've really brought Fair Work to life, and what it means to organisations and individuals. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's come along today. You know, we may be biased, I will admit that, but we do believe that social enterprises reaching across the boundaries of both the commercial and social impact are so well positioned to support a fairer economic and social recovery from COVID and grounded in Fair Work. So on that note, I will leave it and just say thank you again to everyone, and happy Friday. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.